now. God, I love technology. And there we are. We are live. And this is the very lovely Piroshka Cavell, who is the medical director of clinic, is it Sese or CC?
Sese, yeah. Sese.
Sese in Whitstable. And I came across you at the Menopause and Aesthetics conference a couple of weeks ago, where you did a brilliant presentation on what you'd seen really in the way women present when they come into you with the psychological types of issues they're having and sexual and everything else. And I thought that we should discuss this. But first up, you were a midwife in the beginning, then you started to do aesthetics, and you're a nurse prescriber. How have you gone in this journey?
Well, it started off before midwifery. So actually I left school and I was at a grammar school and I wanted to be an actress, and they told me I wasn't clever enough to do the only two things you could do from that school, one of which was to be a teacher and the other a nurse. So I did beauty therapy and hairdressing. So I'm a wig maker and a barber as well. As I started out in beauty and I did makeup, and I had a studio in London that specialised in makeup and makeovers for drag queens, actually. Wow. And I then moved in from that into the sort of trans side of it. So I was looking after people. I got to know an awful lot about their issues and masculising and feminising people, and linked with the Dr. Russell Reid at the Charing Cross Hospital. And then from that, I wanted to do something really a bit more worthy, I thought. And I thought, right, I've done enough now. I'm going to see if I can go back to uni. So at 40, I retrained as a midwife. And I became very interested in women's health. And then we had the increase in obesity. So I became an obesity and weight management specialist. And then one of my colleagues, a doctor, was setting up a training academy. And he said to me, you know, you could combine everything that you've ever done, which would give you really good job satisfaction, if you went into aesthetics. So I thought about it. And it was getting very stressful in midwifery, as I'm sure people are aware. So I thought, okay, so I kind of combined. I retrained. I did my prescribing. When I first trained, I did the usual route that people do. I trained in aesthetics, and I worked in various other clinics for other people to gain lots of experience. That was in 2015, I think. And then I decided in 2019, a great year, to open my own clinic.
Good choice.
Yeah. So I kind of formalised everything, all my prior training, did my prescribing and everything, and started from there. But my focus right from the off was always about, it's holistic, it's women's health, it's everything that contributes to when people come to me for aesthetic treatments and say, oh, I really want X, Y, and Z done. I'm finding out why, what is it that's driving that? And it always goes much deeper. It's all about how they feel in here. That's the most important thing to me.
And what were you finding? Because you actually started off the conference with two very good slides. One of a sort of like 1950s black and white thing with a woman with a lovely smile serving a husband, and the other with the lead character out of Happy Valley sort of having her opening tirade at the man who was about to kill himself, I think, on the slides or something. You know, I'm a menopausal woman. Basically, I'm just not going to put up with this. So what were you finding when women were coming in? What were they saying? What made you think, oh, this has got something to do with hormones?
Because of my background as a midwife who deal with hormones, and you know, for me there's a real connection between looking after pregnant women and menopausal women. These are two things that we do, and as I said in my presentation, these are well women. That's what you've got, first of all, who are going through a process in life. And as people were talking to me and saying about how they've got, you know, most of my demographic are in that age group, so you know, they are 40s upwards, and they come to me and say, oh my God, I just got up and suddenly it looks as if my face has just dropped to the floor. And I've noticed that, you know, my skin's changed and I don't know what's going on. And it feels as if it was really sudden. And I talked to them about what else has been going on. How are you feeling? How's everything else? You know, oh, my joints are really aching. And they talk about the symptoms, and they talk about feeling really low. That, you know, was it just the way their reflection, they were looking in the mirror and not liking what they saw, but that was making them unhappy. But there were other things going on as well. And they're just encouraging a conversation with people and with women. And I was finding that, you know, they were struggling with work, they were struggling with their relationship, they were at a point where their periods were all over the place. So you know, it made sense to me from my background to say, have you thought about the fact that you might be perimenopausal, menopausal, you know, what's going on? And women from a variety of you know, backgrounds. Some, you know, stay-at-home women who were, their main goal was to make the house run properly. you know, brilliant. And other women that are, you know, out there having a career, and suddenly both of these women not being able to do or function 100% and do the things that they have always done. It's
And
such
when
a
you
shock.
say not being able to function, in what sort of thing would they say? Was it brain fog? Was it just inability to, you know,
Yeah.
concentrate, or
Yeah, I mean, a lot of women talk about the brain fog. A lot of them talk about sudden anxiety, you know, having never really been anxious and thinking that just taking over and just feeling overwhelmed. It's all too much. And going through a kind of reflection, kind of, oh my God, it's all too much. Do I actually really want to do it? Oh my God, now I don't want to do my job. What's happening to me? I'm not me. And it leads them down this rabbit hole of not feeling like themselves anymore. And that's really scary.
it is actually very scary, isn't it? I think that really is. I think the not feeling like yourself is a phrase that I hear quite a lot. And the other one is I guess the classic definition of anhedonia, just not being interested in anything anymore, not
Mm,
feeling any sort of joie de vivre, not really,
yes.
yeah, which is a bit sort of
Yes.
sad, isn't it? And
Yeah,
and,
that's
and
really bad.
when they come in and they say those sorts of things, and you mentioned that, you know, have you thought about your hormones? What do they normally think? I know when somebody mentioned to me it was first, you know, it could be perimenopause, and I was like, oh, don't be ridiculous.
Well,
Do you find there's denial, or because there's so much, you know, talk now about menopause that people are more open to considering it?
I think now people are more open to considering it, but even just a few years ago, if you sort of floated that idea, because there was a lot of stigma, and our culture is so very focused on, you know, we have to look a certain way, and there's a lot of emphasis placed on our appearance, and you know, and to suggest to someone that they're getting a bit older is devastating. You know, we have a weird concept. Lots of other cultures, the menopause is seen as a quite a positive thing. It's like, hooray, brilliant, this is the next level, you are now even more important than you were before, and you know, people are going to take you seriously. But in our culture, unfortunately, it's, oh, okay, and this is reinforced, and this is something I hear from women is, oh my God, that's it, it's game over, I'm no longer fertile. That means I'm not sexy. That means no one's going to want to have sex with me. Oh my God, am I just worried about the fact that I have to be sexy? That's not good either. Now I'm really conflicted. And on they go. Yeah. And you know, when you say to them, look, it could be that this isn't the end, you have to be very careful how you talk to women about that and explain this isn't the end, but we need to manage it. It's a fact. You know, it's going to happen, but it's going to be okay. We can find ways to manage it. It's not the end. You know, it doesn't mean you're shriveled up and you're just and no use to anyone anymore, because that is a big thing that happens with women, I think.
God, yeah, that was, I people often say, you know, because I'm such a smarty pants, and I think I know absolutely everything. When it came to vaginal atrophy, I spent 3 to 4 years going, no, it's just repeated cases of thrush, buying more Caniston than probably,
Yeah,
you know, the manufacturers of Caniston should name a wing of their building after me, I'd imagine. You know, the pharmacists were constantly saying to me, no, you really should get this checked out. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
don't be ridiculous. I know my own body. I have a degree in anatomy and physiology. I spent 20
yeah,
years as a medical writer. I know my own body. Only to find out that I was completely and utterly wrong. And it was actually vaginal atrophy. And it got to the point where I could barely walk. I could barely sit.
yeah,
Forget about having sex, anything along those lines. And it took me probably more than a year, I think, to actually be able to explain it to my husband, because of exactly what you said then, that feeling of lack of self-worth. It's sort of like, you know, I can't have kids anymore. My tits have gone south. I
yeah,
look like a poo, and now I can't even have sex. You know, this is what's the point? I
yeah,
have zero self-worth on this earth again. It's time. It was actually when I look at things, you know, even the journals called, you know, reproductive health, post-reproductive health. I'd really like to stop being defined by my reproductive
yeah,
ability.
yeah. And that's a big deal for women, you know, obviously, as you say. And you know, and being able to talk to your partner, it's really hard. And for some women, you know, and their partner still wants them to wear all the sexy underwear, and the women are thinking, I look so disgusting that I couldn't possibly, why does he want me to wear this? Is he just wanting to humiliate me? You know, and it's terrible. And you're right, it is that. And sometimes this happens at a time also when the kids are leaving home, so you've got sort of empty nest syndrome compounding that feeling of, okay, so now what? you know, what do I do now? Yeah. And it's that denial, you know, we tend to, and women tend to go into denial, like you say, especially with things like vaginal atrophy. No, this can't be happening to me. I'm not ready to have this, because our society, you know, we're not of an age where we're sat by the window, you know, that's it, the children have left home, I've done my job. No, we're still very much in the marketplace, you know, and we're working, we're vibrant, we've got careers, and so it doesn't match up. Trying to match those things up is impossible. You've got to navigate it in a different way.
So how do you, it's interesting you say, because the study that came out, the Atlantic Monthly did it, sorry, excuse me, a little while ago, and they wrote it up, or they didn't do it, but they wrote up the study, that most people, when they get sort of, you know, when they get on in years, underestimate how old they are by a good 20 years. And the older you get, the greater the underestimation is. I think one of the researchers who was doing it asked her mother, who was 86, how old do you feel? And the mother instantly answered 46. So there you go. But then as long as you avoid mirrors, you're fine. So it's a very difficult. But when you have people saying those kinds of things to you, how do you advise them to handle that?
Okay, so when I have people saying that, first of all, in my conversation normally is I talk about, well, tell me more about you and what you do and what you're doing, because I really like to draw out the positive, because it's very easy for women to have that perspective shifted so much they can't see their value and what they're doing and what's amazing. And I'm genuinely fascinated by people, and it's so interesting, so listening to them, and when they're talking to me about what they do in life in general, and I will, you know, have this conversation where we talk about positives, and I will, you know, talk to them about how impressive that is, X, Y, and Z, and that they should remember that not everyone can do what they're doing. And then we talk about what we can do to improve the sort of the disconnect between what they're seeing and what they're feeling. So whether that is an aesthetic treatment, or very often we talk about, I like to do the whole thing. So we talk about very much about their gut health, the influence of that on their feelings, on their moods, and their skin and everything else. We talk about all the various treatments that are around that can actually help them manage this and reduce that disconnect, and helping them to look forward rather than backwards. You know, I've had women who've just come to a complete standstill, and then we talk about, what would you really like to do? Let's have a world where we're not going to place any restrictions. If you could do anything and wave a wand, what is it, what you'd like to do? And we talk from that basis, and so we can move forward and see things and visualize things, so we're seeing a future. And then the other things, as I say, the physical things, the physical fixes become sort of a side effect, really, and that's just a great add-on, and then it all comes together.
With anxiety as well, do you go through a sort of similar process with that? Do you sort of, how are you advising people to cope with that? Because as you say, it is all consuming.
Yeah, I mean, the anxiety, we know that that's linked to, you know, that is linked to your gut health. That's also linked to the reduction of your estrogen. So we talk about the hormones, we talk about the gut health, we talk about things that can help, exercise, getting outside, all the simple fixes that you could do every day. I heard a really brilliant study the other day that was about birdsong. If you listen to actual birdsong for just a few seconds in the day, it can transform your mood. So I kind of have a collection of all these weird and wonderful little things that are easy for people. We talk about, you know, I have a lot of books that I recommend. I love Mel Robbins. She's got a great handle on how to manage anxiety. So, and also I recommend for women to attempt, if it's really hard, you know, CBT, that kind of thing. There are lots of things you can do. It doesn't mean you're going to instantly be put on antidepressants. We know they're not the front line anyway for when you're menopausal. It's actually getting your hormones right. So we talk through all of those things and the different options, things like acupuncture, things like massage, stuff that's going to be really good to help you calm your mind and stop that over talking and that nervousness. I had really bad anxiety around my grandchildren, surprisingly. Couldn't take them to a playground. How weird is that? Because I was convinced that,
because something bad would happen and they hurt themselves.
Yeah, they're all going to fall off and smash their heads in, and I'd be in A&E and it would be a disaster. And, you know, just that being responsible, it was, yeah. So all of those things, I sort of bring them together, and everyone's individual. So some people aren't going to like the thought of acupuncture, you know, they're straight on, okay, well, if I can sort my hormones out and that's going to relieve the symptoms, brilliant. Okay. You know, so you have to tailor it to the individual, which is what I do. It's whoever's in front of me and what's going to appeal to them and work for them. You know,
Yeah.
that's my baseline approach to everything, really.
Yeah. And when you're talking to the people about these things, are they quite surprised themselves that those symptoms could actually be linked to estrogen levels?
Yeah.
Do they think, I never thought of that?
Oh yeah, and relieved, massively relieved, because you know sometimes they really think they've got early onset dementia. You know, we know that women are misdiagnosed. I know women have been misdiagnosed with fibromyalgia, and other women, you know, have been told that, yeah, well, you've got anxiety and depression. It's nothing to do with your hormones. And so the relief is huge. And that in itself can be a big turning point for helping them manage it, you know. And also, yeah, and they're also very relieved that there are other things they can do. They're not going to have to be on antidepressants, you know, and that really helps them.
Yeah, which is the talk that you were giving was to doctors, 270 or so
Mm.
of them in the room. And do you think that like the patients, many times doctors don't join the dots on those things, and then, yes, they think, because it's very hard to differentiate between depression
Yeah,
and anxiety that's caused by hormones or caused by anything else.
yeah.
But do you think there's not enough dot joining or listening to patients when they come in and putting these things together?
Yeah, I mean, I have the luxury. It's my own clinic. I can spend as long as I want with a patient. I don't think it's something you can easily establish in 5 or 10 minutes when you're at the desk like this. Yeah, okay, yeah, okay, yeah. I know not all GPs are like that, but that is something that I'm getting, you know, from women. That's been their experience. They go in and, you know, it's 5 minutes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Off you go. We are, you know, they are time poor. I get that. But yeah, the dots aren't being joined up. It's getting better. It is getting better. I have a great local medical centre here, and they have menopause nurses here, and they're getting much, much better at it. So, you know, they've got somewhere they can send a woman if they think, but they're not sure, you know, and that's great. So that's positive. But I think on the whole, yeah, you're right. It's still going to take a while to get them to join up those dots.
Yeah. Is it when they've spoken to you, how do you advise them to go back to their GP and talk about it, or what are you suggesting that they do to get them to be listened to or heard? Actually,
Uh,
is the point.
yeah. Very often, if they're going to go back to their GP, I will write them a letter to take back. So they can take that and they're armed with something. If they've been to me and they've wanted blood tests, we know that that's not necessary to diagnose the menopause, but if they've requested that, then I will send them back with a report so they can go. I will give them the nice guidelines so they can see exactly what the recommendation is. In fact, I had someone not so long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and she lives quite away from me. And so I gave her the tools. It's about giving people the tools, isn't it? So I gave her the nice guidelines. I explained what she was post-stroke person, so it's a little bit more complicated. And she went to her doctors with this, and actually they were great because it really helped them. They weren't offended, and that's what I say to women: don't worry, they're not going to be offended. In fact, you're doing them a favour a lot of the time. You know, if you take it with them, take it with you. And so that's how I work it. I'm not there to antagonize them, but I want to make it easier for my women. So that's what I do: give them the tools, and they can give them to the GP.
Yeah. And are you a prescriber as well? Do you
Yeah,
prescribe HRT, or yeah?
yeah,
So you manage a lot of this then yourself,
yeah,
really? So
yeah.
yeah,
I can do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
that's something that, you know, that's what I do. But if they're away and they, you know, a sort of a, you know, a remote kind of consultation, yeah, then that's what I do. And
Yeah.
you know, that's great.
Yeah. In terms of other sorts of things that they present with, what other sorts of things? Because obviously they're talking to you, as you say, you're giving them the time. What other sorts of things have you noticed that crop up in these conversations?
Oh God, the relationship side of things, the yeah, very much the um, sometimes they talk about the intense irritation that they feel about their partners, and it's just come on from nowhere,
I wonder
and
what.
and you know, I've had that a lot where they've said to me, "Oh my God, you know, actually," once we start the conversation, and they say, "Oh, you're right, you know, thinking about it." You know, I even struggle to just have him breathe near me, and I don't know where this has come from. So that's quite a common thing, which is why I think it's
Chewing.
good.
People
Yeah, it's
chewing as well.
chewing
Breathing
thing.
and chewing.
Yeah, breathing and chewing. The lack of motivation. You know, it's all well and good telling them that exercise is great for you, but that lack of motivation can be a real block. So yeah, having to do small things at a time. Um, the fact that they feel quite tired, that fatigue that comes from, I mean, also that comes from, you know, the brain fog and the anxiety, because that is exhausting, and as well as the physical symptoms and the joint pain, and you know, people being told that, oh well, you know, it's your age, so your joints are going to hurt a bit. So those
That
sort of
drives
things.
me nuts when people
Oh,
say that. It's like, seriously? Like,
I know.
yeah.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, I
I
know that there
started.
probably is some truth in it, but the other side of it is like, you know, literally, we just can you at least give me some just something to hang on to, just
Yeah.
to move away from. Vitamin D is great. Well, I found
Yes.
vitamin D was great for
Yeah.
my joint pain. I know
Yeah.
when I'm deficient in vitamin D because my joints start aching, and that's when I
Yeah.
know it's time for me to start taking it when winter starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And things like that are really great places to start with women. So very often I'll start with gut supplements and vitamin D, because you're gradually getting back control over things. And that's the other thing. Women feel really out of control. It's just like being steamrolled. And I hear that a lot. And so,
An interesting thing is with in terms of those, why, because you know there are some people who argue, okay, if I'm going to take probiotics, are they going to make it through my gut and make any difference at all? Should I be better with prebiotics to sort of, you know, grow the microbiome that's there in the beginning? What are your thoughts?
my thoughts are, I talk to them about their diet, what they're eating anyway. And very often they're deficient, you know, in good food that's going to be good for their gut. So we talk about feeding their gut and increasing their microbiome. So a combination of the two things, really, and that's really important. I also have supplements that are specifically designed to deal with vaginal dryness and irritation. So, you know, that is absolutely brilliant, and that just relieves the symptoms. But yeah, both. We talk about their diet. We increase the amount of varied food, you know, fermented food, all the things that are going to be good for your gut. And we talk about imagining when you're eating something, you know, how's that going to benefit your microbiome? What nutrients are you putting in? Yes, of course, every now and again you're going to have a donut, yeah, whatever, or you're going to drink a glass of red wine. Of course, you have to live. But if you can, the majority of the time, consider how you're feeding your microbiome, because that's the biggest organ in your body and you need to look after it, then that's going to really help and positively influence so many things.
You mentioned their supplements for vaginal health. Are they locally used, or are they
No, they're all.
oral? Because
They're
again,
oral.
there's some debate with people saying, well, you know, it's all very well for you to eat a lactobacillus
Yeah.
suppository. I was going to say supplement. Looking for the right word there. But you know, how does it get from the intestinal cavity to the vagina?
Yeah, so it's all to do with the balance of the flora, and you know, because you've got vaginal flora as well. Okay, so you've got bacteria there, you've got good bacteria there. We know that if you've got gut dysbiosis, which is when you've caused a problem in your gut and it's inflamed, it's all to do with the inflammaging. That disrupts then the communication between the two. So you've got these microbiomes that they're talking to each other, and they are influencing each other and sending bad bacteria as well as good to communicate and create an environment. So you're creating a stable environment. So basically what's happening is when you're taking the supplement that's going to be beneficial to that particular gut bacteria that works with the vaginal flora, you're going to calm everything down. So it's about the communication between the different types.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, because I find this such a fascinating area. I think it's going to be, you know, in many ways, it's probably that whole gut-brain axis is going to sort of revolutionize the way we actually really look at
Totally.
yeah. You mentioned relationships there as well, and we've recently had quite a lot of talk this week about testosterone and its role in when and where it should be prescribed. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that we should listen to our women, and the guidelines say that if once a woman started on the HRT and those symptoms of lack of interest in sex, and so no libido, tired, etc., and that's getting worse, that we should consider prescribing testosterone. Of course we should. You know, women's sex lives are now seen, thank God, by the World Health Organization as a pillar of your quality of life. It is really, really important. It's been disregarded for far too long. And
Yeah, I
women,
mean,
and
it's actually important from the point of view that, I mean, just for keeping the vagina and the labia in reasonable condition, you need
yep,
blood flow.
yep,
And if we want to get rid of that shrinkage, you need some sort
yeah,
of blood going down there.
yeah.
So just to say sex doesn't matter is, or just, lie back in England, think of England and do it in pain, seems extraordinary to me.
Yeah, and also, it's a proven part of good mental health. To be able to have a good sex life, it's really important. All these things kind of link together, don't they? So, to ignore that, and then you're creating more depression, more anxiety, more problems for people. And I think we need to be looking at women and treating them and treating their symptoms. We very quickly got sildenafil for guys, when, that was an issue, and that was proven to be a big issue. And
So then
we
we
still
think
seem to have, and we still seem to have a discrepancy, as we all know, between our healthcare and men's healthcare, it seems, in certain parts.
Yeah, it's interesting actually because in my spare time I write up continuing professional education material for doctors, and one of them was on I wasn't actually writing this one, but the editor sent it to me and said, can you just have a look at this? And so I sort of read it through, and it was actually one of Australia's top leading experts on menopause, and he'd written sometimes women have bothersome symptoms, and I just sent it back to it. I said, get rid of that word bothersome. My face did exactly what you just did. Get rid of the word bothersome. I said, I'm sorry, we rate them either as mildly or severely, sort
Yeah.
of severe. We don't talk about them being bothersome. And I said,
Mm.
imagine if his foreskin was cracked and bleeding and he was asked to have sex with a sandpaper vagina. How happy would he be? Would he be calling that bothersome? I don't
Yeah,
think so.
that would be just a little bit bothersome, wouldn't it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so I think you're right. We have a very, very long way to go in dealing
Mm.
with women's sexual health, which is a bit sad.
Mm.
Sleep is the other thing. Do you have
Yeah.
a lot of talking about sleep?
Yeah, we do a lot of work on sleep, because obviously the imbalance of the hormones, progesterone especially, it really impacts on women's sleep. They're waking up a lot in the night. They're sometimes getting off to sleep, and then of course they're having vasomotor symptoms, so hot flashes and things in the night as well. So sometimes I just wake up. They'll say to me, I just wake up and I'm okay. Yep. Right, I'm awake and I'm not going back to sleep. So it can be as simple as that. And it is obviously, sleep is so important for every part of your body. So we do quite a bit of work on that, because you can't function. And if you've had children, you understand sleep deprivation and the impact that has on you when you have a new baby, and you just cannot believe how precious even 20 minutes becomes. And you feel the detrimental effects of that lack of sleep. If you've ever worked nights, I was terrible at nights. I couldn't sleep on the night shift. I couldn't get my body clock to change. And that feeling of being like a zombie, you can't function properly. Every aspect of your mental health is affected by lack of sleep. So that's really important. That's a really important focus. And there's a great guy, Dr. Robert Walker, who's written a brilliant book about the importance of sleep and how to reprogram yourself. And we look at circadian cycles. It doesn't mean not everyone needs to have 8 to 10 hours of sleep, no, but you need to have really good quality of sleep when you get it. So we look at different ways to fix that, and it can be changing the temperature in the room, obviously your hormones, addressing that, your bedtime rituals, does your partner snore, do you snore, all sorts of little things. What are you eating before you go to bed? All sorts of things. Alcohol, because a lot of people think, well, I'll have a glass of wine and that'll knock me off, hopefully. But what it does is it takes you down and then it brings you back up again, and then boom, you're awake as soon as it's left your system. So, try and avoid sleeping medication, because that will mess up your natural rhythm. So there are lots of ways we can work around that. But temporarily, obviously, if you're really suffering, then you've got to do what you've got to do to get your sleep.
Yeah. The Anita here is saying progesterone with full fat yogurt at night works very well for her, helps with her absorption and has given her good sleep. I've noticed actually that since I've been taking Nutrigestin now, since my Marina coil has been out, and we won't talk about the ongoing bleeding. We'll just leave that aside for the moment. But the Nutrigestin at night does seem to make a difference.
It has a sedative property. Yeah, the Nutrigestin, doesn't it? So it has a sedative property, which is why you need to take it on an empty tummy at night time.
Yeah. So
Mm.
not with your yogurt, Anita.
Well, if you take it with your yogurt and it's working for you, but that increases the absorption. So, if that's fine, if it's working. I'm very much of the opinion if it's working for you and it's not causing you any detrimental or any, great.
And I mean, if we had sleep problems, then we'd want to increase the absorption, wouldn't we? So taking it with food would be better for sleep.
Yeah, but I'm not sure how that impacts on the other effects of it as well. So I just keep an eye on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. And in terms of other things that can help with sleep, then you mentioned a couple of things like keeping the room cool and getting rid of your snoring husband. Just kidding. Roll him over, put a pillow under his back. Are there other things as well, like making sure you turn your mobile phone off?
Yeah.
That nobody ever does ever, but
No.
those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's really important. Get some earplugs, get some a mask if you need one. They can be quite tricky to sleep with though. But also you can do things like a 5-minute, literally just a 5-minute yoga thing before you go to bed is really good for calming the mind and taking you down. Audio books, great, because you can set a sleep timer. And there's something quite nice about having someone read you a story, even as a grown-up. Set a sleep timer on it. You can really relax. It takes your brain away. It does the same kind of thing that you get by mindlessly scrolling. You're switching your head off, but also you then just drift off to sleep and it goes off, which is a useful tactic. A warm shower, nothing too hot, or a warm bath before you go to bed. And also, I mean, the lady that was saying about the yogurt, sometimes because women generally don't eat enough, one of my other bugbears that I'm really passionate about, is that most women go to bed hungry. So do have something like a banana, which is brilliant at bedtime, actually. Yeah. Or a milky.
It's got magnesium and potassium in it, because I was about to mention magnesium. So so a banana is not a bad thing. There are various things. Kiwi fruit apparently are very good for sleep.
Oh, right, I didn't know that.
I did a chat a while back with Dr. Zoe Scheidel, who does a lot on sleep, and we were doing foods that help with sleep. And apparently, they've done some studies, and kiwi apparently is quite a good one as well. The other thing I was going to say, which has just gone out of my head there, because you do the weight stuff, and this is obviously a very big issue. And I don't know if you're coming to the Aesthetics Awards next weekend, but I am, with the very lovely Anita who's invited me, and I went to try on the one dress that I have yesterday and could not even get it done up. So in terms of weight, which is obviously a problem for many people, including me, and women are going to bed hungry, are we doing the wrong thing then for keeping our weight off?
I mean, most women starve themselves, and that's completely the worst thing you can do. What you need to do is actually look at stabilizing your blood sugar. Now, there's no one size fits all. It's very individual. Obviously, each human body is unique. We know that. So my approach to everything, including the weight loss, is tailor-made to each individual person. But overall, women don't eat enough. They leave big, long gaps between food. So what happens is they think they're doing a great thing. Oh, I haven't eaten until 3 o'clock this afternoon. Actually, what you're doing, you're slowing down your metabolism, excuse me, and you're losing muscle mass. Now, if you're going to lose muscle mass, you're losing the thing that's going to burn up your calories. Muscle is really, really hungry, and it needs to be fed. It's also really important for your immune system and for your blood sugar and regulating your insulin. So super important. And that's why you'll see, not that everyone wants to look like a bodybuilder, but that's why if you talk to bodybuilders, they eat regularly, and it's sort of every 3 hours, because they're keeping everything topped up. So you don't have to eat like a bodybuilder, but you do have to nurture your body, excuse me, and stop fighting against it. You want to speed up your metabolism. You don't want to slow it down, because if you're slowing it down, all it will do is just concentrate on hanging on to everything it's got. It's going to make you crave high fat, high sugar, high carb food, because it needs fast fuel, because it's saying, oh my God, we haven't got anything. Then you're going to increase your cortisol levels because you're stressed, and you're going to store what you do get as fat all across your abdomen and then around your organs. So that's my little bugbear there.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, isn't it? Because that is actually, what a lot of people do. And I know I am actually guilty of that myself. I'll stretch things out. I think, oh, well, I won't have lunch until 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're right. And then I'm sort of, picking on a couple of biscuits and whatever else, when whereas a lot more smaller sort of regular meals and keeping the hunger at bay might actually be a far more sensible thing. Although I always laugh when people say have a handful of nuts. Who can only have a handful of nuts? It's not possible to only have a handful of nuts.
So you have to do things like you have to kind of trick yourself. So if you've got the time, is to get a handful of nuts and stick them in a little bag or a container, and that's what you've got with you. So that's all you've got. So you don't have any option that's all you've got. There's little tricks and tips that you can do to make sure. All right, so you get into the habit of doing that. But yeah, it's really hard. For me, my downfall is peanut M&Ms. Oh my Lord, I cannot go near a packet.
Yeah, mine is the chili flavored chips. If there's somebody, I would, if there's a plate, I can eat a family size packet of them by myself easily. So that's why I never buy them, because it's sort of do not stand between me and a plate of chili flavored chips.
Yeah, we've all got something.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything else that you've noticed that women come in with, or any other salient pieces of advice that you think could help? And while you're thinking of that, I'll just look at if people who are watching are thinking, why are you looking at the top of my head? I have the Instagram going on over here on the camera. So I'm just going to have a little look at that and see if anybody's asked.
All right. Okay. So really the most important thing is to be kind to yourself. Very, very important. And understand that what you're going through can be managed. Whatever it is going to be managed in whatever way. Find someone that you can go and talk to. If it's not your GP, find a specialist in your area if you can. There's lots of people online and lots of places you can access help. You're more than welcome to message me on my Instagram and ask me any questions that you've got. I deal with lots of people from different areas, so I research a lot in your area and can point you in the right direction if it's not going to be me that can help you. But look after your diet. Do manage the things that you can control. So you can get lots of help with things like your sleep, with things like your food intake. Do move a little bit more, because we really do not move as much when we get older. A really good reminder of that is if you've got small children around and you're looking after them and you suddenly realise how much that you run around constantly, you don't stop. And once they grow up and you're at home, you come home from work and you sit down. Very often that's all we do, because mentally we're tired. We may have driven miles, but actually physically we're not doing very much at all. So, think of things like that. Get an under-desk cycler if you're at your desk, little things that can help you move more.
Under-desk cycler. I haven't heard of it. I like that idea, because that's literally, I spend all my day at the desk.
Yeah. Sitting is something that we do so much more of these days because of our work. And so, under-desk cyclers are great. Things like get, the little water bottles, stick those in your bag or in your coat while you're walking around. You're just adding a little bit more resistance. So you're having to work just a tiny bit harder. So those sort of things are really easy things to do. But really, if you're feeling low and it's your mood and you're really worried, do not hesitate to go and get some help. Do not leave anything that you're concerned about and you're thinking, I don't know, is this normal? It's not silly. Nothing is a silly question. That's really important.
And baby steps too. I think that's one thing that people find daunting. They suddenly think, well, you're telling me I've got to go to the gym. You're telling me I've got to walk 10,000 steps, and I've got to be doing push-ups on my breakfast bar, and God only knows what else. And then so I see this quite regularly, because I do go to I do on the odd occasion go to the gym in my building, and I'll see older women come in, and you will only see them once. That will be it. They will come, because they're given. I watched the trainer going through them. I mean, this is never going to work.
No, not at all. And you can't tell people to suddenly go and do this. People won't. People are just like, no, that doesn't fit in with my life. That's not me. I've made this effort. Oh my God, I hate this. I'm never doing it again. You've got to think outside the box. So think about what you like doing. Do you like dancing? Do you like just going out for a walk? Get in the fresh air, get outside, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes a day. Start with that. Start with something that's really easy. Park your car at the other end of the supermarket car park, not near the door. And do that sort of thing. So you're just gradually getting used to moving a little bit more. And like with your food, just really small steps, because those are easy to sustain. You can't sustain a massive change all of a sudden to, become this person that you definitely are not. That's just, that's not doable.
Yeah, exactly. I remember once I used to do a lot of running and then I stopped and I thought, well, I need to get back into this again. So I started again and literally I could not make the distance between 2 telegraph poles. But
Yes.
I thought, well, that's all right. I'll just do 2 telegraph poles today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'll do 3 telegraph poles. The next day I'll do
Yeah.
4 telegraph poles.
Yeah.
And just, slowly building it up till I could, get around the block and start doing kilometers again. But
Yeah.
it's a process. And I think that's, people, it's very hard when somebody says, well, you've got to be doing 50 sit-ups and, weightlifting
Yeah.
and all of this. If you haven't done it for years, you really have to start with baby steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, it is a process, and look at building and adding things in. Don't look at taking things away, because that's straight away a negative. And that puts people in the wrong frame of mind. You're going to add
Yeah.
in different things, you're going to add in good things, and you're going to take small steps, and just be proud of everything that you do, and notice the change.
Little things like if you're in the office, use the lift instead of this. I mean, use the stairs instead of the lift, or
Yeah.
get off the tube or your bus, one stop earlier. Things that just they call it incidental exercise. Things that just increase those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to investigate this under table bike thing. I think that's a great idea.
It's a brilliant thing to have. We've got lots of people who really have loved that. Have got that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very impressed. Brilliant. Look, thank you so much for that. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, or you think we've covered it off for the first one?
I think for the first one, that's not so bad, I hope.
Lovely. So people can find you in Whitstable. You're online at Clinic Cesse.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm very bad at pronouncing things. And hopefully we will see you next week at ACE.
Yeah, definitely. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. You too. What's left of it. Enjoy. And thank you everybody for joining us on StreamYard, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and over here on, hello, gorgeous ones, on Instagram. There you go. Lovely. I will speak to you soon. Take care and thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll end this one first, end that one, and then end this one. Lovely. Thank you. Take care.